Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canon podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld podcast network for in-depth discussion on lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Joel, and I'm coming to you live from Underworld South Studio in Orange County. The shroud of the Darkside has fallen. Begun. The Sith War has. That's right. We enter technically our last of the Tales of the Jedi stories, although there's a bit of an epilogue that we might do in the near future. And to continue with our epic journey through these tales, I have brought my friend Redleader. Welcome back.
Hi.
Hi. Let me get the banners up. So thank you for joining us. And of course, as always, you can follow us at Ion Cannon Pod. Let's see. Tractor Beam, I think, will return this week with another edition of Jakku Insurgency Uprising. Probably some New York Comic Con discussion because Matthew and Star Raptor are back. And hopefully Matthew will be back next week as well. So be on the lookout for that. And of course, you can always join us on the Star Wars Underworld Discord, link in the description below, where we have fun game nights, movie nights, and so much more. So, all that being said, let us begin with the week in Star Wars. And my week in Star Wars is a bit of a follow-up to last week's discussion that I had with Dan Star Wars Centralized on Dark Empire. That was a very fun discussion. Dan, if you're listening, thank you again for joining me. That was a great discussion. So what I did afterwards was I wanted to see through, through means of what the individual issues of Dark Empire were like. Because the version I have, which you can see, I don't know if you can see on my bookshelf, unfortunately, is one that gets rid of all the opening crawls and just plays it out as one single book. There's a bunch of notes and supplementary material in the back, but I'm not quite sure if it's the same stuff or.
That old trade format.
Yeah.
Dark Horse did that a lot. Like is it the white omnibus that's like smaller than a comic book in terms of height?
A little bit. I don't know. I can't reach it at the time. It's definitely got like a white. It's got a little bit. I know my Dark Empire 2, the more modern one, because it had the picture of Ian McDermott on it. Dark Empire 1 is just the Luke Skywalker with a bunch of the tech behind him holding the green lightsaber, looking all epic.
Like the way I read the Clone Wars comics was getting those kind of omnibuses by, and it's like, there's no.
Oh no, it's not one of those. It's not one of those.
Okay, it's at least better than that.
Yeah, it's better than that. I have that for Tales of the Jedi, the first two that we did, the Sith War stuff. But no, this one has an actual cover on it, so it's not a white one. But I don't think it's also the original individual issues.
I'm right.
Sure. It's maybe a little bit older, but a little bit afterwards. But
I guess you're just gonna have to, to bite the bullet and buy all of those issues. Do what I do, and just, I have like Batman Year One and trade twice. Do I need? Well, yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, but anyway, through my craftiness, I was able to find the individual issues through means, and I wanted to look in the back to see what they say, and there's some cool stuff. It's actually kind of funny reading it. Like, one thing I kind of discovered as I was reading through the lore stuff and trying to what were they thinking back then? I got one of the things I vibed with was I got the vibe that Palpatine actually is not as old as we think he is, and it's just the dark side decaying his body so quickly that he might be just a 40-year-old but with an 80-year-old body because he's old. So that was interesting. But one thing that really caught my eye was in the back of issue number 5 is Tom Veitch pretty much wrote more or less the entire Ula Caldroma saga. And I took some pictures on a different Google Doc in my notes. And I'm just going to read a little bit of it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm not going to read everything. But I thought it'd just be kind of cool to read from 1991's Dark Empire. And this is what Veitch had to say. The Coming of the Krath. Yeah. For thousands of years, the Jedi were numerous and powerful throughout the galaxy, but it was the time when thousands of Force-sensitive individuals, including many had the potential to become Jedi Knights, were succumbing to the dark side's fascinations. In those days, there were a star system called the Empress Tita system, after a woman warlord who, in the early days of space travel, had conquered and united its 7 worlds. As the millennia passed, the Tita system, which is situated in the deep galactic core, had become a prime source of carbonite, a volatile metal that proved indispensable in the manufacturing of faster-than-light uh, engines. Let's see. I'm gonna skip a couple paragraphs. Here we go. The descendants of the Empress Tita system were still figurehead rulers of the 7 mining worlds, but they had been forced to share the power to a large degree with the commercial interests that developed carbonite mines. Let us see. Here we go. The sons and daughters of the elite were a self-indulgent lot with a leisure time on their hands. A way of amusing themselves, these young aristocrats began dabbling in the lore of primitive magic. At some point in their mischievous experiments, the young Tetons crossed inevitable thresholds and tapped into the strata of magic, unleashed a malign mental reality with unexpected power. What had started as a game suddenly grew serious and took a life of its own. In the weeks following the fateful day, this sinister power utterly shattered the minds of the young Tita elite and began to transform them into willing servants. Under the guidance of Satal Keto, the first of their group to fall, the young Tetons formed a secret society to the dark arts, called themselves the Craft, an evil magician god from the fairy tales they had learned as children. So already we got the freaking Craft. Then there's another one about Ulakel Droma, how he's a great warrior. Talked about the kit, the crass being a problem. You also got Master Thrawn name dropped in these back notes as well. Very fascinating, and then even talk about how Ulakel Droma disguised himself and merged with the social life of Sinagar, the largest city of the 7 worlds. Eventually, after many months, he found his way into the friendship and confidence of the ruling elite. Ulakel Droma became a craft. So this last picture I took, this might sound a little familiar to what we're about to talk about in a couple of moments here. Warrior Magus and Master of the Darkside. What happened next is not completely known. According to the Jedi Holocron, Ulakel Droma disappeared from view for a number of years. The other Jedi Masters tried to locate him, using all their mental power at their disposal. But each time they attempted to penetrate the cloak of the dark power enveloped in the sanctums of the craft, they came up against a wall through the blackest iron and could not advance any further. Then, without warning, Ulakel Droma reappeared as a high priest of the craft. During the years of his disappearance, he had been transformed completely into a warrior magus with dark powers, far beyond those demonstrated by other members of the craft. He reappeared coincide with political struggle among craft leadership. The craft split into 3 groups, one dominated by Satal Keto, the founder, the second by Satal's cousin, Alina, a woman whose dark side powers included the ability to create mass hallucination, the third by Ulakel Droma. Keldroma's organization was militaristic and bloodthirsty. He set out on a path of conquest, gathering treasures, army, and weaponry. In short, he had possessed a vast fleet of faster-than-light warp ships that could swoop down unexpectedly on worlds in distant parts of the galaxy and quickly pillage the ruling cities. Needless to say, Keldroma was declared an enemy of the Republic, and Keldroma declared himself an enemy of the Jedi. As the Jedi Knights took action to protect the world threatened by Keldroma's piracy, the sorceress Alima founded an alliance with Keldroma using her wicked dark side talents against the Jedi with great effectiveness. The conflict that followed is remembered as an important historical turning point on the history of the Jedi Knights. It was the first war in which the dark side powers were used on a massive scale, affecting the fate of millions. So yeah, that's basically the proto-pilot version of what we're about to read today. But Red, any interesting little thoughts here, seeing this and hearing me read it?
That's interesting. It definitely seems like Free Nad hasn't entered the picture at all yet.
Mhm.
Uh, and obviously Exar isn't a part of it at all, which is because
That would come later.
Kevin J. Anderson creates the character sort of just as a person in that time period, and they decide to merge their ideas of Ulick with the existing Kevin J. Anderson thing of Voto CS Boss and Nomi Sunrider. And so, yeah, obviously extrapolating from there, it's it's funny that it specifies so much in that initial thing that Ulick was like pure and had no
Mhm.
like was completely kind of infallible, sort of, which is obviously trying to draw a parallel to Luke,
Right.
and his arrogance in trying to infiltrate the Empire.
Mhm.
Whereas when Veitch gets to around to doing the story, him, actually running it out as a narrative, he
Mhm.
definitely goes way more into fallibility, and we'll get to that with the Sith War and Anderson on his own, kind of going back weirdly to Veitch's sort of just synopsis, scribbled down idea, and sort of backtracking to that of Ulick was a pure good guy manipulated by the Sith magic.
Yeah, it's funny. I looked this up because when I was talking to Dan about it, one thing Dan brought up is like Dark Empire very much kind of feels like a backdoor pilot for a lot of these ideas that Veitch
Mm-hmm.
would go with, and I agree with that. There, I one of the things if you ever read Dark Empire, if you ever have a chance, like really like get into it, it's very much I call it prototypey. And by which I mean you can see Veitch like he's testing out these ideas. They're not maybe fully fleshed out. They don't have maybe like the same room to breathe because one 6-issue comic and 3 or 4 couple arcs. A lot more room to breathe and explore those ideas. But also, yeah, it is very interesting, kind of seeing like, oh yeah, he there's a lot of backdoor pilot stuff in here, and this is in the same issue, I believe, in Dark Empire, where Leia looks at the holocron, not all holocron,
Mm-hmm.
the holocron, which has Bodo Boss, who I think is like Master Vodo's descendant.
Yeah, that is specified in the letters pages
Right,
of
so it's
this arc.
right, and Bodo Boss is like 3 times 3 have tried to infiltrate the dark side, and 3 times it has failed. Ooh, very very ominous. And
So who were those? Who were the three?
they never say who the 3 were. I think Ulick is probably the first one.
The
I
last was probably Luke.
my hot take, and this is like just a head canon. I think he might be referencing Vader Anakin on this one.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and this
That
is
was
like
sort of what's hinted at. If they want to move away from it, sure. If not, then there's the setup.
right. So that was always kind of my hot take. Is like he's talking about Ulick, Anakin, and Luke, which back when you look at Ulick, both in where he evolved and obviously today, it's like yeah, it's kind of like he is the Anakin Luke of it all. So yeah, that's all I just wanted to show you because it's sort of like oh wow, Veitch really had kind of this idea for a while, and it's just kind of cool watching it evolve and get meshed together with other things over time and expanded upon. So yeah, I thought this was neat. It's always why you should always check the individual issues, and like I like trades. Don't get me wrong, I like trades. I like just having it all there. Sometimes it's both expensive and somewhat cheaper. But at the same time, it's like you do kind of miss out on like all these cool little things that like in the back notes, and Dark Empire has a lot of back notes, most of them just trying to figure out, okay, how this is how it all meshes with the Thrawn trilogy at the time. It's like, okay, put that there, put that there.
So I did find a Wikipedia interview from years ago with Veitch
Oh, nice.
on this. So the
Mhm.
question was your version of TOTJ along the same lines as what was eventually approved for publishing? Several differences exist in the endnotes for the Dark Empire comics, where you first hinted at the characters and events that would eventually become Tales of the Jedi,
Mhm.
where the Dark Empire endnotes intended to be simply a basic layout of what was to come, or did writing for TOTJ intentionally deviate from what was laid down in the endnotes? If yes, what were the reasons for doing so? His answer is I can't help much on that question. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go back and study the endnotes, etc. I will tell you this, though. There was a vast story web that was forming in my mind. I had several notebooks full of ideas. Some days I used to sit with a cup of coffee and just spin out the possibilities for hours. At that point in my life, Star Wars was a big part of my thinking. I was a fan, of course, but it was more than that. I had this idea that because the Jedi were spiritual warriors, like ancient Japanese swordsmen, who could eventually balance off the dark side of the Force, which is one word here, which I think is telling of how it's not like a proper dark side, light side thing,
Mhm.
with new exposition about what might be constituted as the light side of the Force, quote unquote. I used to dream about doing that at night. Maybe I was nuts.
Might be of George and his development of the prequels a little bit too, where it's sort of like you look at some of the original and New Hope stuff, and it's like it kind of still works, meshes. Palpatine, became president of the Republic, and then the corporations helped him, and he became emperor. The Clone War stuff kind of got meshed in later. Yeah, that's cool. Another thing I also found interesting is in these notes is just the complete lack of the word Sith at all. That's just another thing I just find funny. Like he was a high priest. He did never say Sith Lord. I just think that's kind of funny. But yeah, that is what I wanted to show you guys. So I got nothing really for news. We'll probably talk a little about that next week with Matthew. So with that being said, let's begin the Sith War. The technically, no, not technically, but from our purposes, the last in the chronological reread of Tales of the Jedi, with maybe the exception of an epilogue. But this is technically the last one chronologically. So, with that being said, let's just get into it. I'll just give my overarching thoughts first, and we'll start from there. So overall, I do enjoy it. I mean, I had fun with this book. It's definitely a bit of a step down from Dark Lord of the Sith, which is still my favorite overall in the entire series. But I do like the chaotic nature of this war. Just seeing, again, like notes say Ulick building the forces, Exar Kun kind of being more of the Sith master type, getting his apprentices and his dark prophets. There's a lot of cool stuff with like the Coruscant battle, of course. And just all that. I do think the characters get a little lost. Some of the other characters do get a little lost, like Nomi gets a little lost. A lot of the other Jedi kind of get a little lost. It really is focused on Ulick and Exar Kun. I think it is about them mostly. But I do like the ending. I especially like the final panels, which we'll get into a little more in depth at the end. Because it's very kind of like karmic justice for Exar there. But yeah, overall, it's good. I do think it misses a little bit of Veitch's touch per se, and you can also start to see kind of the direction Anderson's taking, like the Sith. I showed you in private read one of the photos of Naga Sadao. The Naga Sadao retcons continue. But no, overall, it's definitely a fun moment, and also it's like it will build upon so many other things with KOTOR and Tor later on. So yeah, those are my overarching thoughts. But Red, what about you? I know this isn't one that you are more newer to than the others. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it definitely feels like a Kevin J. Anderson story.
Mhm.
Uh, I think it's funny because it's 6 issues. So I'm pretty sure it's the longest or tied for longest with within this series. It's definitely the longest of like continuing story. Uh, because the first arc gets split into two parts. Uh, yeah, it's very fun and it adds a lot of not so much stuff to the lore, but creates a lot of implications for later stuff. Like
Mhm.
it is fascinating to see how much KOTOR 2 would take from the Mandalore stuff
Oh yeah.
and everything with Duxon in that game and all the hinting towards the Mandalorian Wars and why those happen, why Onderon's important to that.
Mhm.
in the context of the story itself, it does definitely get repetitive. Uh, we have. I mean, we read the Golden Age of the Sith stuff way earlier, but chronologically, that stuff was written, and then we got back to the Sith War, if I'm remembering correctly.
I
And
thought that
so,
came after the Sith War. I thought the Sith War, and then they went back. It's like a prequel thing.
now they did it in the middle.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I'm
Okay.
pretty sure that's how that worked. I might be wrong, but it's definitely the battles are really similar. Like we get Coruscant being attacked, kind of in the same exact way, as the Great Hyperspace War, with like ships being cloaked by illusions, and then the Sith battle. There's a lot more on the ground, which is nice. Uh, I think the most interesting stuff was in the first issue or two with attacking shipyards. Just
That was cool.
we get some like early industrialization in the Republic, in sort of the sense of a greater scale than what we've seen, even if it is kind of hard to follow of how many ships the New Republic has. Uh, it seems like they fluctuate from all of their ships are heading into a trap, but they're seemingly fine later. I know there's apparently some continuity errors with where characters are, based on dialogue boxes. Like Alima like signals Mandalore at a point when he's not supposed to be there, and there were like attempts to deal with that. Uh, but yeah, I think the main problem really is just too many plot threads being pulled together is what happens. Like it does remind me a lot of Jedi Academy.
Right. Yeah. I've never read Jedi Academy, unfortunately, but harder to find books and comic people. But no, I will take your word for it. Actually, I checked. Golden Age of the Sith was 1997.
Oh, dang.
So this was 1996. So, yeah, this definitely comes before those two.
So then he repeated it for those.
Right. Because that was, I think that was like one of the bigger things. It's like some of the retroactivity of those two comics. Um, I'll ask you this, Red, since we read it in this fashion. Do you think, would you have preferred? And I apologize if we did it, but would you have preferred to have read it in release order, or do you think reading in chronological order has given you a different perspective? I'm always curious about those sorts of things when it comes to Star Wars.
I think reading in chronological works because we know then better where things went with the Sith stuff. That's easier to understand as opposed to being further confused by the retcons, because you and I know from Wikipedia and stuff, and from the Sith Code source book about like who Naga Sadow was and stuff. So it'd be probably more confusing for us if we didn't read Golden Age and Fall beforehand.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things I like to do, I like to kind of get into the headspace of like not trying to know what I know, and that's hard, you're right? Because we're big lore junkies. But sort of like I like to kind of like read, like I loved reading like the earlier stuff and like what did people think the Sith were at the time? And it's like kind of looking at the retcon and stuff, so it's very interesting as well. But no, I agree with you. There are definitely a lot of plot points, and I do think certain characters kind of again get lost in the shuffle. And kind of you can kind of feel like they kind of lose their importance. Like I do feel like outside of XR and Ulik, a lot of the other characters kind of get lost again, like Nomi, like Alima, even to a certain degree. Although she gets a pretty brutal death. We'll talk about that in a bit. No, I would agree with that as well. And of course, I do love the art. Don't get me wrong. With the ships are like all over the place. But let's get into our characters, shall we? I kind of divided into just kind of different things. So let's start with XR Coon here. I do like seeing in general both Ulik and XR building a Sith Empire. I think that's really kind of neat just to kind of see what they thought building a Sith Empire was at the time. And it's very different from our other villains. Obviously Palpatine just kind of got to usurp the Republic infrastructure and call it a day. But here it's like you gotta see Ulik and XR, like they're recruiting their Jedi, they're building their ships, they're stealing their ships. Ulik gotta fight a warrior to like get his allegiance, get his forces. But back on XR, I also like that XR is the more academic of the two. Like he is the one who's like using the holocrons. It's like, I'll give you knowledge and wisdom and power and be part of my brotherhood of uber cool Jedi. We're all gonna do some really cool things that's totally not shady at all. No, not shady at all. And he's kind of more the spiritual leader of this empire compared to Ulik, who is more the commander on the ground. But what did you make of XR, Red, in terms of his role as the two Sith Lords here?
Yeah, I like XR's scheming. It is. I don't know entirely how to feel about XR's seducing people to the dark side. It seems a bit easy, except for the one who he doesn't mind control. Crado or Cardo.
The lion dude?
Yeah, the Cathar guy.
Cathar guy who's like really likes XR. See, that's his LeFou. To go back to our Gaston's thing.
I mean, that guy has a girlfriend. It's Silvar.
That's true.
But yeah, him being sort of that was the one character that actually felt like they really developed throughout the course of this, funnily enough. Of just like he kind of hangs on to whoever is strongest or the authority figure in his life, and so it's Master Vodo. When Master Vodo's not there, it's Exar. He looks up to Exar. That's already been established. And so him being sort of sniveling but completely loyal is a fun combination. And Ulik sort of just being like, he is the most loyal person to us, but he is getting annoying. Like, yeah, let him do the suicide mission without him realizing. That is a very sad death scene for him of like just Exar, why?
He's your best friend. Oh, yeah, that was great. Yeah, it is weird though. It's like it does kind of feel like mind control with these spirits.
That is definitely straight up mind control. Yeah, when the shattered holocron goes into them.
I've never read Jedi Academy, but I do know that through how it's kind of written and because it's kind of weird, there is debate and discourse about Luke's students. Like, is he bad or is he just being mind controlled? And I know this is like a Kevin J. Anderson thing, where it's like,
yeah, with Kip, we'll get to that with Ulik especially. In context of the apprentices, yeah, I mean, they don't have anything like Screen from that book with how just suddenly he turns and no one kind of noticing. Like, at least when these guys get mind controlled, they seem like properly mind controlled. It's not just like a sudden personality shift. Like they seem kind of out of it,
right?
A lot more. But then that also means that no one except Exar really falls to the dark side.
And maybe the lion guy. I mean, even then, it's like doesn't just seems like he's following his buddy around.
Yeah, he's just kind of deluded himself. Is the thing. But yeah, it would have been nice if instead of these succinct miniseries, we had more of an ongoing. Because then you could develop like what is XR playing on within the internal politics of the Jedi?
Mm-hmm.
Why are other Jedi willing to join him?
Do you think that the Sith War, despite being is it 6 issues or is it
Yeah,
more?
6 issues.
Is a bit too condensed and rushed, especially for being this big galactic thing. I mean, I don't need like the Clone Wars 3 years worth of stories, although I do. Not that I don't enjoy it, but it's like it does feel like it's like the Great Hyperspace Wars thing a little bit. Where it's like, well, that happened. Sure, there's going to be some
Yeah,
fallout, but it's like the actual war is pretty quick.
maybe, but at the same time, Anderson within 6 issues sort of repeats the same battle like 4 times,
That's
and
true.
there's not much difference. And we sort of just hop between all of the forces involved, move to this thing, fight, same trick used, all of the forces. Like he introduces so many different factions and characters and then has to kill a bunch of them off or remove them from the chess table. Like, why are
They
the Mandalorians here? The Massassi don't really. I mean, the Massassi are there as muscle, but with the Mandalorians, they sort of become superfluous until the mass sacrifice, which the Jedi don't even get to see.
and another thing about the Mandalorians is I I they do kind of feel like they just kind of come out of nowhere a little bit.
They literally just get introduced in the first scene as, hey, they're attacking.
Right. And and I think that, especially like thinking back to like the time of like if I were reading this, I'd probably be confused. Like, who the heck are these guys? Like, they haven't showed up at all. And it's sort of like, I don't know what the history of the Mandalorians, I mean, outside of Boba Fett, of course, were like with the rest of the lore around it at the time. I don't even think they were even that prominent in other things. Maybe like some old.
This this is pretty early in
Mhm.
Mandalorians as, I mean, obviously at the end we get kind of confirmation that they're Tong.
That's right. That's back when they were aliens.
Yep. Which is definitely fun to see it. Oh yeah, these are still Tong at this point. But yeah, they sort of do just show up. I like the premise of, okay, the Mandalorians see a planet that's in turmoil and they're like, hey, we're gonna test our metal. That's interesting, and I think Mandalore. Which Mandalore is this?
It's not Mandalore the Ultimate. It's Mandalore. There are two base titles: Mandalore the Ultimate, Mandalore the Brave, Mandalore the Mando.
I think it's the Indomitable. Yeah, it is the Indomitable. Uh, Mandalore the Indomitable is a fun character. I kind of like that he's a counter to Credo or Cardo, whatever, in a sense, in how he's loyal to Ulick above all else, though Ulick doesn't betray him at all or anything like that.
Right.
Uh, but I guess you could say like Ulick's quest and everything sends him on a suicidal mission that gets him unceremoniously killed as well, like happens to Credo, which is kind of neat. I would like that maybe drawn home a little bit more, or more of a parallel of like both of them are so fiercely loyal to their mentor figures or whatever that they,
Their team. Their team.
yeah, and that like Mandalore would view Credo as like completely cowardly and pathetic, but they kind of end up the same way because of their sense of honor or loyalty that is very mistaken.
I do like that Kevin J. Anderson is trying to give both villains like a little inner circle, which I like. I love that. I love it when the villains have like a team around them, just not themselves. Like that's to go back to the original Thrawn trilogy for a hot second. Like that was always the fun stuff. Where it's like, it's not just Thrawn. It's like Thrawn, Pelion, Savios, and Rook are like the villain team. It's always fun.
And what's his face, the Imperial Army guy.
Oh yeah, and that guy, and that the Imperial Army guy. But it's like where it's like it's like every scene with them, it's Savios going, "I'm going to rule the Empire," and Thrawn's like, yep, you do that, old man, yep," and Pelion's just like, I don't know what to do. But it does feel
like, I need an adult.
yes, and Thrawn, I am the adult. Oh no. Um, but yeah, but I do feel like it is kind of a little underdeveloped, like because Uluk does have his quote unquote team of Alima and Mandalorian, the Indomitable, and Exar kind of has oh, I always forget Lion Guy's name. Shoot.
Credo,
Credo,
Cardo.
Cardo, Credo. But there's not much there. I mean, I do feel like Uluk gets maybe a little more with Alima, but even then, not by much. But we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, it's interesting. I guess we'll get to Uluk now. I do like seeing Uluk though, like just kind of being the brash military commander for sure. That's cool. I like that he's kind of building up his forces, not by just kind of like recruiting through just like beating a couple warriors and gaining recruits and stuff. But one thing, like I do think you mentioned earlier about his characterization, I do agree is it does feel like Ula just has completely done a 180 in terms of going evil now. And like, it's a little, it's almost like Revenge of the Sith Anakin, but like maybe even worse. I don't know. It's like, oh, now Anakin just all full on evil. Like, like, oh, day two, I'm all evil now. Red eyes and
Yeah,
all.
I think with Anakin, it's like it's so quick, but we know at least what he wants. I don't
Right.
know what Ulik is trying to accomplish. Like he's suddenly like the new Sith age will begin and the Republic is weak and needs to be destroyed. And it's like, well, why did this? What was this have to do with what he was saying about having to infiltrate the craft?
Yeah, you're right. That is, you're absolutely right. That is kind of weird. It's
But
like,
like
oh,
if he was trying to bring everyone to Coruscant and stuff with the intention of completely wiping out the Sith, with like some diluted idea of killing off the dark side by essentially mutually just destroying each other.
mhm.
That would kind of be interesting as just a he's broken. But this way it's like what is he even justifying this to himself as?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, like again, like with Luke and Dark Empire, it is he does stick with his guns of I need to destroy the dark side from within. He just kind of gives up, but obviously he kind of breaks and realizes, oh shoot, the dark side is stronger for like a hot second. So he kind of like Luke's fall is more of like Palpatine just wins out waiting. Like I broke him, hooray! And again with Anakin, you're right. It's like yeah, Anakin might be too quick, and he might be Xing out the younglings really quickly here on day one. But at least it's like, it's all to say Padme. It's like, you kind of can see the delusions of like, you and I can rule the galaxy and we can make things the way we want to. There's a logic there. It might be quick, but at least there's a logic. But it's like, look, you went from I gotta infiltrate the dark side to I will restore the Sith to glory and totally buy into this now because Sith are cool. And it's kind of weird, right? Like even Exar Kun is just like he's the power for power guy's sake. So it's like I get why he's all into it. But with Ulik, yeah, you're right. It is a little. He lost the plot, but it's weird that I don't think he replaced the plot with another plot, right? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Um, like even his return to Coruscant, it's cool because I like seeing Coruscant, but it's like you just now believe in the glory of the Sith. That's it. Okay, it's kind of weird. Um, it's like it's not even like it is. I guess maybe it is kind of funny enough going back to that original end notes, but losing a lot of the kind of the pathos of I got to do all these bad things for a good reason kind of a situation, which is a little sad.
Yeah.
See, let me just keep going to the issue, but I do like again, I do like just the battles and stuff. Like, what did you think of like seeing the armies get created and like the build up of the empires?
Yeah, I like the stealing ships at the shipyard. Uh I think I think there's a bit of contrast as well with like Exar's more esoteric stuff to the point that he's using like the only ship under his command really is the battleship that Naga Sadao had
Yeah,
that's been buried for a century.
I love that shit. It's cool. Um, I do love some of these designs, though. They're so cool. They're very. They kind of remind me of some of them of Separatist designs later on with like the kind of the angles and stuff.
Yeah, and the Republic fleet looks a lot more classic Star Wars, honestly. Like the ships in the first issue, uh, that we get to see. I think it's the fleet that arrives. Yeah, the fleet that arrives to the destroyed station, uh, towards the end of the first issue. Look like that. Those are very Star Warsy shapes. There's the one that looks almost like an aircraft carrier with like engines vertically behind it. There's one that's like uneven but huge. There's one that has kind of like a T shape to it. There's one that essentially looks like a Starhawk. Uh,
It does.
are you looking at? Yeah, that's a weird Starhawk. It's very funny. And those designs are all very cool.
Yeah, it's like it's got like the big front and like the skinny back.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
It's exactly the hatchet shape. That was all we had as a description for the Starhawk for like a solid 2 years.
Yeah. Starhawks are now in Empire at War. Thrawn's Revenge. I just saw one a couple days ago. With a friend of mine who's playing. So that was cool. Um so yeah, that was neat. Um One of my favorite moments though of this comic though, and I think it is a highlight, is the Coruscant issue. And, as much as Ulick's characterization is just gone from 1 to 1,000 in terms of the evil, it is cool seeing the Senate. I put in the notes, and I don't know if you have your issue with you. I don't know. It's in issue 3, I believe, with Ulick in the trial. There's an elephant senator. It's so cool. Little elephant dude.
Yeah, we have the I don't even know what the Chancellor is. Though Alien Chancellor, which is fun.
Yay, Alien Chancellor. It's a cool thing, the trial, and whatnot. And of course, Master Vodo CS boss versus XR and the first appearance of a double-bladed lightsaber, which is cool. But yeah, what do you think of the entire Coruscant issue, Red, for Sith War?
It's neat. The Senate obviously looks so
Tiny.
it looks like such a Roman Senate kind of thing. Like it is just a huge room with normal seats, which I kind of like because it's like it's all ceremonial and stuff, and so they haven't updated. Uh, but they're it's clearly like the main building in the skyline, but the skyline hasn't been built up as much yet and everything, so it is different. And you can kind of use it as justification of like, well, you have pods and stuff so people can get out of there, so you don't have the one exit cut off if XR Kun just shows up.
Right. Well, one thing though, this issue kind of does highlight, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, even though I think we talked about it a bit, is again, I think the heroes are kind of missing. Like, where there's not a lot of Nomi, there's not a lot of Ulick's brother. They kind of get kind of lost in the shuffle a lot of the time. I don't know if you felt that reading this.
Nomi
issue.
is completely sidelined in this.
Oh, absolutely. It's
It's
not as bad as Padme, but it's close. Revenge of the Sith.
It's like Anderson kind of does this as well in Jedi Academy, but he's good with female characters in Young Jedi Knights. Well, he essentially creates the entire characterization for Jaina, but
cool.
Like because Jaina as more than a toddler, he's like the only person, the person to write like everything until New Republic, or NJL.
That makes sense.
But yeah, Nomi just sort of disappears from plot relevance, or is sort of just there. She has like her Deus Ex Machina power that brings up some interesting ideas, but we don't
We'll
really
get there.
explore
We'll get there.
we don't really explore the ideas or the philosophy stuff
Mhm.
to that. I don't remember if she even really uses her lightsaber in this, which would be cool if they had committed in Freedom Uprising to her not using a lightsaber at all. Because of her distaste for them. It's like that would have been neat. But here it kind of you already established that she's killed a bunch of people, but now she isn't killing people just because we forgot to give her scenes. It's not
Yeah,
a
yeah,
narrative choice.
yeah. Like because I like the idea of certain Jedi just won't use lightsabers; they'll just use the Force. Which is something we're kind of reintroducing back to a certain extent, where it's like the certain Jedi are getting to a place where it's like they just don't care about using a lightsaber anymore. They're just like they're all about the Force and full on knowledge and defense, never attack. But no, you're absolutely right. She gets lost big time, and it's sad because she kind of is the one who does the Deus Ex Machina at the end, which we'll get to. I want to save that for a different part, but it's sort of like I feel like we need more of her to kind of get to that point, right? That sort of like, what do I do? What do I do? And then it's like then we can. I feel like that would have a bigger impact on the Deus Ex Machina.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell I don't remember him because I just call him Ulick's brother. He's
K.
K. That's right, K drama. That's right, K. Like he's barely in it, and he's supposed to be kind of a big reason why certain events happen at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, he gets lost in there too. Like this story, I think, likes its villains a little too much. Which I get. I'm a villains guy myself, but it's like it'd be like I mean, I don't know about Jedi Academy, but it's like if Jedi Academy were all about Kip and XR, not enough about Luke, I guess.
Well, I think introducing so many plots and then kind of just losing them, like the third book, I think it's Champions of the Force in the Jedi Academy trilogy. They wrap up all of the Exar Kun stuff, all of the Avon the Jedi Academy stuff is wrapped up like 5 chapters in, and the
Wow.
entire like 300 pages left in the book
Mhm.
are just Dala going on a rampage and wrapping up the Sun Crusher, and that's it. Like it's very weirdly paced.
That is weirdly paced because, like, you know, Thrawn trilogy. I mean, classic Star Wars and the Thrawn trilogy. Like, they like to have their parallel Force story with their military story. Um, it'd be like I don't know. It'd be like if Return of the Jedi killed the Emperor in the first half, and then we spent the rest of it just fighting the Death Star or something.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense, but it's like still.
Or like if Joris Sabayoth had died
Mhm.
before our heroes make it to Wayland.
Right. Instead of the duels happening at the same time at the Battle of Bilbringi.
Yeah.
Uh, I want to go back to Ulick for a hot second because we kind of hinted at this, but I kind of forgot about it. As someone who has read Jedi Academy, is Ulick is this sort of a precursor or like a very Kip like with Ulick, or is it a bit different in terms of like, is it mind control? Is it not? Because you've alluded at that, so go all
From what
in.
I remember, Kip definitely has the same like weird ambiguity of doesn't seem to be mind controlled. It seems like they just get a new personality suddenly, but
Mhm.
like it's the same person memories wise and everything. And then when the dark side gets beaten or whatever, Kip is just sort of lives. And I mean, there it is like an interesting idea at the end of that story of like, okay, that's his punishment is living.
Right.
Luke chooses not to have him executed.
Hmm.
Uh, but I was like, I haven't read I Jedi yet, but I know in that Stackpole kind of goes off on disliking that plot thread, that idea, and being
Right.
like, no, Kip is responsible. In the context of that, I think you could I honestly feel like you could go more the direction of
Hmm.
nah, Kip was just mind controlled because he has like no force training except for weirdly hanging out with Vima Boda for some reason
Hmm.
at some time in the past.
Hmm.
Uh And so it's like he is like a 16-year-old who's been living in spice mines his whole life.
Right.
I can kind of see more of like, yeah, he doesn't really have control over that. Exarchon is just like completely controlling him.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but here, obviously, we sort of. It's funny. We before like yesterday or 2 days ago, I watched Tapcaf Transmissions review, and they were very harsh on the Sith War. But I think because both neither of them really liked Tales of the Jedi and Eckhart Exart Ladder. Uh,
Exarchon ladder.
he was just very tired of the comics at that point. But one of the things they were kind of joking about was okay, what was I just saying about Ulick?
Ulick. Let's
Oh,
see.
about the poison
Oh, right. The point.
of like yeah, like last time is like there's a poison, the Sith poison, or is the poison hatred? You know, maybe there was something. Maybe someone was trying to say something with that. They gotta just leave it at that. But it's like, yeah, that is essentially the thing here of like
Mhm.
we just get Ulick doing stuff that's evil, and then but this isn't you, the poison, and it's like the whole poison stuff in the previous thing was very clearly saying something. Like Veitch was trying to do something with that of like, yeah, there is a poison in him, but is the poison the actual physical poison, or is it the poison of the dark side and what is inherently in him, or what he's choosing to give into? To maybe the poison that's really turning him to the dark side isn't the literal poison, and it's in him already, and he's choosing to let that. And it's like here, it's just kind of like
Right.
yeah, so there's the physical poison. That was the out we wrote in, right? Right? There wasn't anything more than that going on with that whole idea.
See, basically how Obi-Wan Kenobi should have saved Anakin is just knock him out, get some antidote, put in that light side juice, and bada boom, your friend's back.
Anakin wasn't physically poisoned, so that's the only reason why he wasn't able to be redeemed until Palpatine tried to kill Luke.
Yeah. But no, you're right. It is a cop out there. Yeah, they did not like Sith War. I think we're nicer on Sith War than they were, even though we have our critiques. Um, but no, I agree. One thing about I don't want to make this too much about Jedi Academy, but I had to bring this up because I brought it up last time. Weirdly enough, when we talked about the Sith War, so I'll bring it up again. I don't not the Sith War, Dark Lords. Is the thing about Kip that always again for me, it reminds me of Hal Jordan Parallax a little bit with the but again with
Yeah,
that retcon a little bit.
yeah.
Um, we've got the guy Cisco's kind of going kill him. Although I don't know anything about the Parallax stuff that much because I've never read the Green Lanterns stuff, but that's just what I've always heard. So
Yeah, it definitely is that direction of like writing in an out, but sort of using the out to flatten the character, or at least that story.
right. So there's Ulick for you. Oh, I guess I said I kind of lost the course on stuff. But what do you think about seeing a double blade lightsaber in the Voto boss duel?
It's very fun. The fight is so quick. Sadly, I think there maybe should have been more emphasis on or more interaction between Boss and Exar, but at the same time, I do really like the stuff with Boss being like, "Now this is all my fault. I failed as a teacher and everything." Uh, Maybe that should have happened later in the story, just because that does feel like kind of the heart of the Exar stuff, and once he's dead, it's sort of just going through the motions to some extent.
Yeah, like if I were to rewrite this and just kind of like streamline a bunch of stuff, I would almost make that maybe like issue 4, make that like the second to last kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can have XR kind of destroy himself because I like that, and I'll get to that when we get there.
Yeah, yeah.
But this is very much your Obi-Wan moment here, and again, like Obi-Wan, he becomes the Force Ghost. He vanishes. because that's
A
what they
lot of
did.
people doing this.
Um, Speaking of Force Ghosts and characters who never coming back, I forget. Did Master Thrawn become a Force Ghost, or did he die and not disappear?
Master Thon still when
What?
because Master Thon survives this.
Oh, not Master Thrawn. Ulick's Master.
Arca Jeff, yeah, he becomes a Force Ghost.
It's a shame he never shows up in this. Just like at the last kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
he kind of vanishes from the thing.
Yeah,
I,
that sort of Nautilin person's apprentice or master disappears as a Force Ghost, and then uh, Udbanar or wait, Odaner, right?
I think
Who's Tree Guy?
I think that might be Ordinary, right? Because he's in issue 5. We get to see his origins because he'll be in Dark Empire too. Um,
Does Luke retrieve the lightsabers in that?
I think so. I think he gets some stuff. Yeah, I think so because I think I remember like Luke and the ragtag Force cult people that he meets kind of all hold their lightsabers up and like, "We're the new Jedi Order. We're all not gonna die." 'Cause I remember that moment pretty vaguely. So maybe I think so. Um, yeah. I do also feel, I guess, of like other outside of Nomi, like other characters, like we don't see, or do we see? See, this is how crowded it is. I don't remember things. Like we don't see like the Onderonians anymore. They're kind of out of it. Or are you okay with that? It's like, they don't really need to be
I was
there.
okay with that. I was kind of annoyed that they brought them back in at the very end. And it's like, why are we adding another front to this battle? Just have it happen on Yavin 4 instead of having cutaways to a fight that literally the only characters we know are characters we haven't seen since Freedom That Uprising and Mandalore, who was introduced here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um. Before we get to some of the ending stuff, I just want to talk a little about the deaths of Alima and Credo, because that's kind of brutal. They even like see like Alima's skull in there, but yeah, what you make of like most of issue 4 where they're dead, where like it's sort of like Ulick's ready to get rid of Alima because he's sick of her being all huggy, and XR just getting annoyed
Well,
by.
she keeps betraying him and being very obvious about it.
That's true. That's true. So it's like, yeah, it's like we all know she's not gonna stick around. But it's cool thing. Like I'll say this, it is kind of cool thing. Kind of her outfits kind of keep changing as she becomes more and more dark side heavy. She got like now full on veil and robes and stuff. That was cool. Again, the Naga Sadao retcons, they're still there. I have the issue. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Yeah, XR says blah 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 blah. Hang on, gotta get there. Almost there. He says 1,000 years ago, my predecessor, the Dark Lord Naga Sadao, used the ship to flee Republic fighters. See, now we're already retconning Naga Sadao to be a Dark Lord instead of a Sith magician. I just thought that was kind of cool or interesting.
Is that a retcon?
Well, I always got we kind of had this discussion last time. I got the impression Naga Sadao was just a Sith magician and not a Dark Lord, with in like the traditional sense.
But Naga Sadao does become Dark Lord of the Sith after Mark Arachnos dies, right?
That's right. I mean, he will be right. So, yeah. I guess it's not that much of a retcon as much, but yeah. What anything you want to say about Alima and Kratos' deaths outside of it being brutal and you see a skeleton like 5
Yeah, I like that we get the destruction thing that obviously Naga Sadao keeps using a couple of times. How he destroys Widow Crash and everything. Uh, the sort of bringing in a super weapon because it's Kevin J. Anderson, but having it destroy itself is fun. Like it is just a completely self-destructive thing.
Right. Gotta have them super weapons. There are, at least it's not like a super weapon at the end. So give it that. Yeah,
Well, he does sort of try and make a super weapon out of himself.
that is true. That is
This
true.
does not end well for him.
It does not. It does not. But we'll get to there because I actually have a lot to say about that. But yeah, um, but yeah, overall, they're pretty brutal, pretty brutal. So chronologically, we're kind of getting to the final two issues. So, let me see. Are we? Yeah. So, hey, look, Droma. Nomi's Sunrider's solution to that: just take away his force powers. That's how you do it. Um, much like Ulick kind of 180, I will agree, is like his turn to the light is kind of like almost like a you killed your brother and it's like, oh, now you regret everything you do. I mean, I get that.
I really like that.
Oh, really? Okay. I mean, I'll be curious. Yeah, I see why. I can see why. It's like it's kind of a wake up call kind of a situation.
Yeah, that it's like all of the high of that breaks, and like he doesn't necessarily immediately turn back to the light. It's like he's just crushed.
No,
That's
I
the one scene that actually works emotionally throughout this, I think. Just Ulick, before Kay's body even hits the ground, he's already like, oh shit. And he's just done. Uh I just wish he was a bit more pathetic kind of afterwards. Like a bit more pitiful or beaten.
interesting. I mean, he seemed pretty down in those last scenes, but I guess he
At
needed
the
more.
very end, yeah, but he's sort of I wish everyone else was harder on him then. Well, look, you removed it. Why would you remove his force powers? That's mean.
That's true. Yeah, I get that. No, but
And
I
it's like,
think
well,
I
she
agree.
didn't kill him.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, be happy. I mean, I don't mind that she didn't kill him because I don't think that's like in their personality. Well,
Wait,
she
but
is.
that's what I'm saying. Is like everyone's like, how could you do that to him? And it's like it was that or kill him.
That's
Like
true.
she kept someone alive.
Right, and I like that. And no, and you're right because I feel like I think and to kind of use other. I can totally see this kind of being like the wake up call because it's sort of like you can kill a bunch of faceless randos and Nandos. Aha. But it's sort of like, oh shoot, I killed somebody like important to me. Dang it. Like, oh shoot. It's which says a lot
He
about
hasn't
Anakin.
he hasn't killed a Jedi yet.
Oh really? I guess
I don't think he's killed any Jedi yet.
that's true. But it's also he kills a Jedi and his brother, so it's sort of like I guess the
That's what I'm
question.
saying. Like he's sort of still operating. If there was like a consistency, I mean, he does avoid fighting the Jedi throughout,
Mhm.
and he does kind of immediately lose when going up against them. The one time they sort of fight, which gets him captured.
Mhm.
So there is that consistency. He seems just more annoyed with them. I think it
Mhm.
would work better or be clearer if we had an idea of what he's trying to do when he's like, "Hey, everyone, get out of my way!" And it's like, "Well, you're gonna have to kill them eventually because you're literally trying to destroy everything." Uh, if it was like I'm trying to save the Jedi Order through these extreme and stupid means, that would make more sense, and that's what it initially was. And so, like the Ulick of Dark Lords of the Sith, everything he's doing is is so no Jedi have to die because he sees that then the dark side can't be defeated without this huge cost to the Jedi Order and to the light side. So I have to sacrifice myself to destroy it. And so if it was like he's deluding himself into pitting the Sith against the Republic to save the Jedi or whatever, and he
Right.
is just sacrificing all of these innocent people in like the broader sense of it, and allowing Exar to do all this stuff and building up this cult and everything. And then he starts killing Jedi. He's like, "Oh, this is literally the only outcome of what that could happen out of what I'm doing,"
Mhm.
and that breaking him out of it. That it's like, oh, the reason he's doing this is to protect the people he's murdering now would work, but he just seems sort of indifferent towards plans. Like
Mhm.
we get, I mean, we get like him criticizing the Republic and everything, but I'm pretty sure he was using like Republic and Jedi interchangeably prior to that. Uh, I mean, I do love the uh moment where he essentially quotes the opening of Macbeth, the signifying nothing,
Oh, I didn't realize that, but that's cool.
a
Especially
tale of sound and fear. Or what is the line? Like a tale of sound and fury.
I should know this. I read Macbeth. The well, it's actually just we three meet again. It's under light and rain with the witches.
Uh, it's all sound and fury signifying nothing. Why am I? I need to actually read Shakespeare. My sister would kill me if she knew I was butchering Shakespeare stuff.
I reading my professor would kill me because I'm reading Shakespeare right now. I'm also reading Brecht. Brecht.
Oh, Bertolt Brecht?
Yeah, the German Marxist dude.
Yeah, he's an amazing figure.
We just read The Good Person of Szechuan.
Ooh. Yeah, and then it is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. And we weirdly get a Macbeth reference for some reason out of Ulick.
Ulick gets to say quote Shakespeare, but Palpatine never got to quote Shakespeare. That's just
yeah. But Exar does make more of a sort of critique of like that when he's talking to. Talking is maybe not the right word. When he's like destroying the body and mind of the Chancellor of Squid Guy. I just want to say that you and the whole Republic Senate are irrelevant. The Jedi Knights have coddled you for centuries. You are an outdated and ineffective puppets to tradition. Go on, show us. And then he makes them say we are puppets, irrelevant.
classic Sith stuff, really. Yeah. Yeah, that you're right.
But yeah, so like if Ulick was sort of more based on like the Jedi in general, or sort of viewing this as still saving the Jedi, and we got more explicit stuff about that. But Exar is sort of telling his apprentices and stuff, "Hey, we're totally still Jedi, and we're just more powerful." But then he's like, "Yeah, we want to destroy this because we're better, we're even stronger Jedi. The Jedi should step in and do all this stuff." But I think one thing is we don't have any like real Republic citizens we get to interact with.
Yeah.
Because they're so focused, so we don't really have an idea of what the Republic is. Not politically, but like individual people, which would have maybe justified the Onderon stuff, but you would have to bring that in earlier in the story.
It's also interesting kind of thinking about especially this time frame, talking about like XR still uses the term Jedi and Sith kind of interchangeably a lot. Although some of it you can argue is maybe just him trying to like coax the apprentices and not really show his hand.
Yeah.
But it is kind of interesting. Like I think about Joru Sabayos, who very much considers himself a Jedi, even though it's kind of again in the context of he's a crazy clone. So it's like, how much you want to take him as a good source, but at the same time, he's like, I'm a Jedi, but the Jedi should be rulers, and we should have Jedi kings, and I should interfere because I'm cool and I got sparkly powers.
Yeah, look at my pecs. I should be in charge.
Exactly. I get to sit in a nice throne and rule over a city like a Jedi should. So it's sort of interesting there. But no, I think you're right. I think it is a good moment there where that kind of snaps Ulick with his brother's death, snaps Ulick out of kind of his rampage almost. It's just that Ulick kind of does it kind of like your whole thing was just I'm a Sith Lord now, and now that's what breaks you out of it. But go ahead.
I guess we should talk also about the Jedi. I mean, the issue is literally called Jedi Holocaust, and like the all of the stuff with the Jedi seems more threat here than usual, which I do like. Like the Senate gets attacked and everything, but at the end of the day, this is about the light side and dark side. like the Republic isn't what's in the balance, the galaxy isn't even. It's the greater cosmic balance of everything.
No, you're right. It is very interesting. Especially like, because yeah, you're right. Like I didn't think about that, but it's like, we're kind of used to, like, oh, we take the capital and we took the Senate, we won because we took the political power. It's like Exar doesn't really care about Coruscant. It's like he's even like to Ulick, like, do you really want to do this, dude? This is really stupid. This is stupid of you. Like he's like to X, like he's to Xr's like to Ulick, like you're going too far. Like not even going too far, like in an evil way, just like you're not thinking. That's kind of another interesting thing, which I wish they could have played on, is like Ulick feels a lot more interested in like I guess the living, the real, the material world a lot, where it's like, like let's bomb Coruscant, let's seize the Senate. Well, Xr's like, let's just build our knowledge and like we can become like Force deities, and obviously we know where that's going to lead at the end, and we'll get there. But I do think you're right, and it is something I think that Veitch was always a little better at, even though this is Anderson, where it's like Veitch is very much interested in just the cosmic light versus dark war. It's not even necessarily like Jedi versus Sith in terms of like two factions. It's full on like light side, dark side. It's like you're almost destroying a cosmic entity almost. Would you like to expound upon that any?
Yeah, I mean, what I think it's at the beginning of, or at the end of one of the previous arcs where Odan talks about like sensing a threat to the light side, and that being the main danger they're up against. And this sort of makes good on that. Elevates it to a more cosmic, or not even cosmic, but like spiritual battle between light and dark. And you get that with like the Sith, this new golden age. I mean, they even say it outright of like, hey, your golden age didn't last very long. Tags are. It's sort of an Age of Ultron thing of like it's intentional that the age lasts like a week. That
Right.
that this it's the precedent it sets and everything like that, and the moral battle or philosophical idea.
Right. Right.
And I mean, he's destroying Osis and all the stuff with them fighting over scraps of Jedi. It's like, yeah, we Coruscant's whatever. That's handled. Now this is the battle for Jedi history and legacy and everything.
Right. That's what I mean. Even Palpatine tried a little bit of that as well. Just take it all down. No, it's like you're right. Diacosis, and that's where obviously Kratos' girlfriend comes in and tries to take XR down, which is cool. And obviously, the tree Jedi becomes a full-on tree now. He'll sleep for thousands of years. That was neat. It's also one of the few times in Masashi get more to do, so that's kind of neat as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess we can talk a little bit more of those final issues and the I took away his force powers thing. So I like this idea and concept. I think this is something we should try, honestly, more of in Star Wars. I kind of wish this would come back in some ways. Can we have like Luke getting cut off from his force powers, but they're not really taken from him? He's just kind of in a slump, and then once he gets out of the slump, it's like, oh shoot, I'm back. But this is the Avatar thing, right? It's like I took away his firebending, I took away his force powers. It's a really neat power. But yeah, you're right. It's like, why are you all complaining? It's like either this or you have to kill him, and I don't think she wants to kill him. So, but it's like, yeah, this is the best. This is probably the best option here.
Yeah, and like because it's all the spiritual stuff, it would be interesting if they make more of an explicit point about like that is the most horrifying thing you could do to a Jedi, cutting them off. Like I always loved that in uh, KOTOR 2, the dialogue options you have when talking about the absence of the Force, where you can do like the Kreia thing and be like, "Oh, it feels so freeing," or be like, "I wish I had my powers," or be like, "It's what is the line Kreia has about that?"
It is an interesting power itself. To cut off someone completely from the Force. Um, I don't. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how, if that's is that does feel like a good evolution of just Force abilities from, I guess, just at this point the original trilogy for sure. Uh,
Yeah,
but it is a neat, interesting development, and a good way to get Ulik alive without having to kill him.
but yeah, they like who have seen the Force, who have only, or like never seen through, always seen through the Force, see it through the eyes of the exile now, being just completely cut off. Um,
I mean, again, the closest I think we get to that is in Last Jedi with Luke, but it's not like he got cut off from the Force so much as he kind of like, I mean, he kind of got cut off, but more in a self. He's just so so go depressed and
yeah,
sad. It's like I don't want to deal with. I don't want to touch it. Like kind of like
yeah,
he's self cut off himself from the Force so much.
yeah. He's just actively not using it, not connecting to it. Same thing happens to Obi-Wan in the Obi-Wan show.
Oh, that's right. That's true. So yeah, like, um, that's right. And then by the end, it's like he's got his Obi-Wan's got his groove back. Master Qui-Gon is there, giving him his little snark. Love me some Qui-Gon snark.
Yeah, but the line was, the absence of the Force is knowing what you want to say and never finding the words. It is a chorus replaced with silence, hearing teachings without meaning. And it is like having a beloved pupil to whom you have shared everything, sacrificed everything, and then having them turn from you and forget all you were.
I love Creyas.
Yeah, it's like the idea of like removing the Force from a Force user is like so despicable to the Jedi. I can understand that, but here it's kind of just like that was rude. Like, how dare you? Instead of like this is the ultimate cruelty or indignity, I just wish that was kind of expressed more specifically, and it was a conscious choice instead of just, oh, I was super angry. It makes Nomi's whole role in the story is to be like, oh, like no, and feel sad,
it's
or
Padme.
literally,
It's Padme,
or
man.
literally the narration to tell us what she really meant was she feels really sad because she loved him. It's like, yeah, we know that's the subtext. That's not even subtext. It's just the text. Why do you have to specify stuff again and again? Or to act hysterically, essentially, is how they're framing her response. It's like Nomi was like the most interesting character.
She is the Padme, and this is Revenge of the Sith, and all with the same problem.
At least Redemption, she is essentially the main character. One of them, her and Pima.
That's true. So she gets to live and do more. So that's nice. But no, you're right. It is. It is. Again, this is why if I had to like rewrite it to do the thing, like I would be very much focusing on Ulik and Nomi. It's like kind of building up to this moment of like, yeah, this has to be the solution to the problem. And I do like from a philosophical standpoint, I do think the worst thing you can do is cut off a Jedi from the Force. I think in some ways that might be the worst thing you can do to anybody. Well, I'm not gonna say that because that's. But in terms of like the spiritual nature of Star Wars, that is probably the worst thing you could do because if the Force is in everybody, to completely cut them off, it's like, holy moly, that's kind of evil. You know, And that's why I like characters like Kreia, who are like kind of like I want to destroy the Force, or even to a certain extent, with recently, and they go this route with Balin, who's got that. I want to talk to the manager of the Force energy because I'm sick of all this again and again stuff. So it's like I do like that from like the philosophical standpoint as well. Is
Mhm.
there anywhere else that we go deeper into? I guess with Cray is kind of the only one, but it's like anywhere else where like we go into this idea of cutting someone off from the force. Like, is this something that is built upon outside of KOTOR 2? Or is that kind of it?
I'm not sure. Well, no, we do with Callista.
I didn't know
Yeah, when
that.
Luke's computer girlfriend takes over the body of one of his students who's dead essentially, and then she doesn't have the Force. She can sort
Computer
of use the
girl,
dark side.
computer girlfriend who hung out with Ahsoka back in her day.
She did? What?
Yeah, Callista, like in one of those old early 2000s Clone Wars novels that Karen Travis wrote, um, back in like 2008, 2009. Yeah, Callista's in one of them, and she hangs out with Ahsoka. Apparently, she calls Ahsoka out for her outfit. Apparently,
What the? I don't know why the like the Jedi on the Eye of Palpatine and on that mission had to be, well, I guess no, because it is the Eye of Palpatine and everything, so they had to be from the Clone Wars era, technically.
well, technically speaking, shouldn't Ahsoka also have known Corran Horn's dad, and Corran Horn is a baby or
Well,
something?
Anakin hung out with him and told him that he was about Padme and everything because they had a novel together.
That's funny.
Corrin's Corrin's grandfather, or I forget how they tried to deal with the retcon because
Condense that time. Condense that time.
chronologically, Corrin's father at the time of the Clone Wars should be like 13 and already have Corrin.
Condensed timelines, people. Yay.
Could have just made it 30 years.
Yep. Anyway, back to this. I do think though it is. I do outside of like some of the more like we don't really go into it. I do like how both Ulik and XR are kind of dealt with, where it's like Ulik gets to live and be kind of pathetic. Maybe he could have been more pathetic for sure, but he kind of got to live. But let's get to the kind of the final battle of Yavin, where Ulik's like, I'm going to tell you where XR is. I'm going to deal with this. I do like XR's defeat. I really do. Like, this is one of the more.
Mm-hmm.
This is. I think this is my moment, even more than yours, for Ulik, where it's like I like the fact that XR like is gonna just go full out. Like, I'm going to become the Darkside cosmic spirit beam, and like I just love like he's just so like, yeah, I'm gonna live forever, and then it just backfires on him big time. But what do you make of that moment?
Yeah, it's very fitting for this character who's been so obsessed with all of the esoteric stuff. I mean, like you were saying, with like Ulik is about the is so focused on material stuff. Exar is so focused on the spiritual thing that Ulik is left without any access to the spiritual. He's only physical and material, and Ulik is, and Exar is left with literally no physical body or form.
It's interesting, especially like looking at later Sith Lords like Palpatine. Because again, I like it's funny, like this is the one place where I think XR is almost like the reverse of Palpatine, where like Palpatine is all about wanting the body, like he wants his flesh. That's why he's all about those clones, that clone life. Even though he's always talking about like I live as energy, it's like yeah, I live with energy, but I don't want to be energy. I want my clone bodies. I want my handsome looking young clone bodies. Where XR's like, I'll give up my body. Sure, I'll just be a cosmic being and just cause chaos everywhere. I don't like it is interesting like to see a Sith Lord who's not really interested in like a proper empire in that sense. It reminds me a little bit, and I don't know how much you know about any of this stuff, and I only know bits and bobs of some of the stuff they wanted to do with KOTOR 3, the original plan before Tor came in, where it's like we got more of those esoteric Sith, where it's like again, which KOTOR 2 was building off of, where it's like the Sith aren't really about like physical empires and machines. They're like the Sith are a belief, and it's like very Cthulhu like. If you don't, I don't know how much you know about that stuff.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that. But yeah, Exar definitely serves a very different role from a Palpatine figure or Malgus or anything like that, or Vader for that matter.
Or Revan.
Yeah.
It's interesting actually. Ulick almost feels like Revan almost feels like in some ways, especially with some of maybe the later retcons I don't remember because Revan gets complicated and weird. Almost what I feel like they wanted to do with Ulick, where it's like Revan became the Sith Lord to save the Republic, but kind of lost the plot, but still thought he was doing the right thing.
Yeah, that stupid thing that Kreia says. Or Kreia's
right.
like, did he fall?
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, she's Kreia's she's a liar. That's the whole point. I don't know why people act like that was canon.
Right. No, he fell, but I do think it's like, at least with Revan, you get it. I even hear some stuff about Jason Solo later on too.
Well, Jason for sure has a clear, like Revan. Kreia's justification for stuff that she wasn't there for and that she's very clearly trying to excuse is, oh, he went and met the other Sith that are out there, the greater threat, which she hints at the end of the game. She's like, oh, he went out there and he came back corrupted by them, but to save the Republic, and that's her weird justification that's clearly supposed to be just a self-justification. And then the Revan novel says, oh, he got turned to the dark side because Vitiate tortured him. Or whatever. Like, or he encountered Vitiate and was like, I'm going to destroy you, and then Vitiate turns him and Malak to the dark side. Which is even stupider because it means that he didn't choose to turn to the dark side, which kind of defeats the evil stuff. And then the Tor game goes back to, no, he fell to the dark side. Like, he wants to exterminate anyone with Sith blood. Like, he rigs the droids in the Sith Empire to kill anyone with 1%. He literally is a 1%er.
Oh,
like, they're making a point with that. And people are like, but Revan never fell to the dark side. And it's like, dude, Kreia was just BSing. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, like, and that's why, at least with Revan, it's like, I get where, I mean, he fell to the dark side. I 100% agree with that. Just saying, like, at least I see I see what he's trying to sell himself. Even though
he's like, he especially in the original context of the first two games, or first game really, like, Revan is just creating the Sith Empire and wants to take over the Republic. Like, he's not trying to save it or save the Jedi. He's like, well, the Republic was weak. I might as well take over. They're all ungrateful. I'm going to be in charge now. Or we're going to just destroy everything. Like, it's a very different thing. Jason has a whole justification, and it's built on stuff from the Vong War and all of his stuff about maybe it is all just the Force and intention is what matters. And so I can use this stuff for good. And he just sort of starts doing that and has this utilitarian approach. And so he loses the plot kind of spiritually until he is just a monster.
Right.
So he's naming a Star Destroyer after Anakin and killing people, bombing Kashyyyk with it and stuff. Like, he descending that way.
As you do. I mean, it is all about intent because we have electric judgment and the Force power.
Which, yeah, well, I mean, I think that's part of the thing of, like, he's like, well, why not just use Force Lightning since it's easier to use? So it's like, I don't necessarily like the fact that they give Luke a good guy Force Lightning, but, like, it is sort of like, well, we have a good guy Force Lightning, and Jason's like, but we're just doing the same thing, so might as well just happen to the dark side because I know I'm good.
Self-confidence.
It's like he's given a way to do the exact same power, but for him, it's like, well, just take the easier path.
Yeah.
Yoda didn't have a lesson about that.
Yoda, not based, man, not based.
I mean, he did. It was literally, is the dark side stronger? No, easier, quicker,
right,
but not more powerful.
right. No, absolutely, and
That's why you need to do the piggyback training. He needed to give Luke piggyback rides. Without that, the training's incomplete.
Exactly, and that needs to be standard. So but so what we're saying is, in Rey's NGO, Rey needs to give piggyback rides to all students.
No, for Rey to fully take over, she has to find Grogu and he has to give her a piggyback ride.
Yes, agreed. 100%.
Still the same size, like the same puppet as in The Mandalorian, and just find a way to manage that.
Yes, make it happen. Make it happen. But no, I think just so there's some interesting comparisons to Ulick, and why I think Ulick kind of is his motivations are kind of in these issues.
And we talked about before, like Veidt wanted Ulick to die. That was his plan.
That's right.
Ulick doesn't get redeemed.
Would you have preferred that, or do you like what we got? I'm curious.
Redemption's very heartfelt and stuff, and so like this, I don't know if it's worth it. I would keep like the exact K death stuff, but then have him die against X or something. Redemption existing makes that easier.
Yeah, I think this. I mean, we'll say this for the end. I have a thought about that, but no, I can see that. I do though. Do you think? I guess to go back to XR Kuhn's whole thing. Do you think though that his? Do you think that the backfiring feels rushed? Because it does kind of feel like he does the thing, and then we're all kind of like mind control, not mind control, but like force block. Do you think that feels rushed, or I mean, I like everything up until afterwards, but what do you think in terms of like?
I mean, I guess they feel that he's trying to do something and do the force shield.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it would have been better if there was an actual battle of some sort.
Yeah, because it's funny. I used to watch the Old Republic timeline videos. Which are really good. And in that, when they did the XR Kun thing, like they actually had the Jedi there. It looked like the Jedi were like in the temple, and they just got there, and like they tried to we gotta hold him back. Instead of just kind of very impersonal, like, oh shoot, something's going down. Let's do our stuff. So
yeah, I think they're kind of hamstrung to some extent by what is said in Jedi Academy, which is, I think, specifically that Nomi blocks him.
Right. Well, then again, it's like give Nomi more stuff to do. Have an XR versus Nomi moment.
Well, yeah, and you also have to have like several people do it because that's the well. What happens in the book, I think, is they all just put their lightsabers together, and that destroys Exar. Like all the Jedi students just put their lightsabers, cross them, and it's like, yeah, Exar's dead. And then Stackpole was like, no, that's stupid. And so in iJedi, Corrin like destroys the temple while they're doing that, and so it's like they're like, yay, we won by doing this silly thing. And Ulick's, or not Ulick, Corrin's actually doing the thing. It just happens to be at that moment.
I should really check out iJedi at least, because I know it got an essential guide, not essential guide. It got an essential re-release, and I think now there's an audio book for it now. So
Stackable spicy.
Yeah, nice. Nice. So yeah, you got a nice re-release. So maybe I can check it out. So yeah, there's that. But I do like some of the stuff we wrap up. I like seeing, there must be a new Mandalore. The Tong guy takes over. And I do like the final moments of the comic where, Ulick is looking around like he's just got to look one more time. It's like XR's like in the temple, like screaming, Ulick, help. It's very depressing, but I love it because, yeah, you deserve that. XR, that's what you get. But what do you think of those final moments in the comic?
Yeah, that's fantastic. very creepy, uh, a very funny way for that to end for Exar. Uh,
Very
and yeah,
pathetic, and
he's
I
just
love it. I love it.
yeah, he's just waiting now. He's essentially what Freed Nad ended up as.
But worse, because I feel like Nad got more freedom.
Oh yeah, I mean Nad had a cult and everything. Exar is just sitting there with some Masasi deep underneath the temple.
Yeah, he doesn't even get a civilization. He gets a rebel base later in 4,000 years.
Yeah,
Uh,
he gets belittled essentially like that. It is funny that like Palpatine didn't do anything with Yavin.
no, that is interesting, and that is kind of the weirder kind of. I mean, it's not a New Hope fault, but it's kind of one of the weirder retcons where it's like, it's like, did Palpatine have like did Palpatine not really feel anything when Tarkin's reporting? It's like we found the rebel base on Yavin 4. And Palpatine's like Yavin 4, Yavin 4. Why does that name sound familiar? And then he realizes it's too late. It's like, oh shoot, there's a bunch of Sith stuff there. Wait, don't blow up the planet, Tarkin.
Well, and we know from Darksaber that he was upset that Yavin 4 got blown up
Well, no, it
because,
did.
well, I mean, he thought it was going to get blown up, and so he was upset. He was like, "Oh, bring me these bugs, these flesh-eating bugs that I like from Yavin 4." So he knew it existed and had some stuff he liked from it, and so he gets those bugs, and then when it fails, and he's pissed at Bevel Lemlisk, he's like, "You screwed up," and that's I think that's one of Bevel Lemlisk's deaths is Palpatine six the flesh eating bugs on him because he's like, well, now they're not rare and special.
Dang, that's
But so
awesome.
he has experience evidently with Yavin 4 in that situation.
Yeah, it's even interesting that in the many, 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 many battles of Yavin 4 post Death Star, which you can play in Galactic Battlegrounds or the comics or Rogue One or Rogue Squadron. Um,
Battlefront 2.
Battlefront 2. You can play both from the good guy and the bad guy side.
Oh,
There's
I meant
never.
the story mode. You go to Yavin 4.
Oh yeah, I know that. There's never like a mission where it's like even like another mission where it's like when Palpatine's like, "Hey, when you attack the Temple Raider, look for some weird stuff." There was this guy called Exar Kun. He's important. Yeah, make sure clear out the temple and get all the cool stuff. It's like
Yeah, I mean, I guess it has been looted by that point. Like all that's there is Exar's spirit.
it's interesting, and I guess we can kind of talk now about a little bit about like the after effects, like our final thoughts, but also kind of the influence of these books is outside of A New Hope and obviously the Jedi Temple stuff, Academy stuff. Obviously, there I don't remember much of Yavin 4 like in the Old Republic stuff, or they don't do it with KOTOR. It's like no one goes back to Yavin until really.
Uh, you do get to briefly visit a fuel ship platform orbital station above Yavin 4 in the first KOTOR.
Okay.
It's literally one room.
Nice.
They do mention Exarch because there is a Republic presence there above it, but like
Hmm.
I think they mentioned like the surface is burned up. Uh, like the fires have stopped, but it's still all destroyed and stuff. And there's sort of just an outpost watching over it, kind of like how there is in above Korriban, uh, at the beginning of Tor.
Okay.
Uh, the Sith do take it again during the new Sith Wars because it's an important place, but yeah, I mean, I guess there's just not much of anything except for when Luke's Jedi Order get there, which I guess kind of makes sense. It's like if there's a bunch of Jedi there for a prolonged period, the Masasi would come back out, the Exar Kun would have someone to manipulate, and the Leviathans that are from even longer ago will come out eventually.
It is interesting though, and again, I guess that's just because of A New Hope. So it's like we kind of have to deal with that. With how what came first chronologically is the fact that Yavin was never, although I guess Korriban wasn't either, was never like blockaded by the Empire during those days, right? Like like you'd think Palpatine would want to secure like these Sith worlds, like just to make sure no one was coming doing anything weird with them except for him. which kind of allowed the rebels to build their base there. Because he had Dathomir blockaded, although I guess that was because he hated the Night Sisters more than it was a Sith world. So I just think that's a little odd, kind of lore wise, where it's like, don't you want to keep these important Sith places like Korriban and Yavin secure Palpatine just in case? I'm just saying. But yeah, just to kind of get into our final thoughts. Overall, weaker than Dark Lords of the Sith for sure. Still a pretty fun ending overall. And I think, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts because you did mention this in Redemption, when we talked a little about Redemption. I think this is one of those situations where I think we like this. Maybe do you think we like this more because of what comes after and what built upon it than the book itself a little bit?
Yeah, I think also it is just it's I guess it's not really a breezy read, but it definitely it's a bunch of action scenes and stuff, so it keeps you entertained. You get a bunch of fun connections to later or to previous stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just always interesting. It's I think kind of the same reason why like I enjoy Truce of Bakura, even though that's maybe not necessarily a great book. If like I wouldn't be interested in if it wasn't Star Wars, but because it has an important place, I do enjoy it.
No, I get that. It's foundational, right? It's sort of like how like here's some hot takes. I is the Thrawn trilogy overrated? Probably yes. I mean, I think they're good books. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to say they're bad books. But at the same time, it's like you can't still deny the Thrawn trilogy's foundational importance to the universe and everything that came after it. So, I mean, I do think those books still do stand alone on their own pretty well as well. But like, yeah, they are foundational, and this is very much as well. And I guess to kind of like to truly wrap up here, Tales of the Jedi, man. Overall, I still think these are pretty good. As I really just have enjoyed reading all of them in chronological order. But even if we did it in release order, I would have enjoyed it myself. Because these are just so foundational and these are so it's just cool to see what people thought of Star Wars in the 90s and really start to really kick back in to the universe and like where this all will go in the decades to follow. And it's been kind of cool like ending here in a way. But yeah, Red, you want to say anything about Tales of Jedi? Just get kind of our final salvo.
Just it is a very fun part of old Star Wars lore.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tom Veitch gave so much character to it, and even though I know a lot of people don't like some of the art throughout, and it does get weak in some places, and it does change around artists a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There is something very quintessentially '90s Dark Horse about it.
Mm-hmm.
There is something sort of not indie comic, but just it's a different vibe, and in a vibe you're probably not gonna ever get from Marvel Star Wars, especially because you can't trace these ships
That's true.
or facial expressions, and so because there's all this originality, they can't do Marvel can't cheap out.
So true. Yeah, you're right on that. And just I think just the '90s vibe of it all. Right, this was before the prequels. This was before where all you had to build off of with the original trilogy. So there was a lot of guesswork.
Mm-hmm.
And Veitch did some pretty good darn guesswork. Right, like I know this was Anderson who wrote this, but this is off of Veitch's stuff. But Veitch really, he got closer than most to Lucas. I think in a lot of the way things are depicted, maybe not depicted, but definitely like the essence of it. And especially doing Dark Empire last week with Dan, I'm glad Veitch got to do these and really have an influence on the pre-Phantom Menace era in a way he kind of really couldn't with the post-Endor era of Star Wars storytelling. Oh, he kind of did a little bit with Jedi Academy because Anderson was trying to make that all work to various degrees. Um, but this is built off of with KOTOR 2, Tor, Bane stuff a little bit, even Plagueis to a certain extent, all kind of is built on this foundation. And yeah, I'd highly recommend it to anybody who reads it. I just read a question with this. Would you recommend people read this in chronological, or would you start with the original Veitch Knights of the Old Republic issues? Funny enough.
I think start with Fight because it is
Mhm.
a lot simpler and gives sort of a unique vibe.
No, I would agree with that. Yeah, I would start with Veitch too. Uh yeah, but again, highly recommended. And any final thoughts before we wrap it up? Red, did I miss anything? Anything you
No,
wanted to
I think
bring up?
that's it.
All right. Thank you everybody for joining us. Oop, let me get my banners. Matthew will hopefully be back next week. We'll talk about New York Comic Con, maybe some other stuff. As well. Of course, if you liked this episode, drop us a comment. Let us know what you thought. Tell us if you read Tales of the Jedi, the comic book series. What do you think about it? And as always, you can check us out at the Ion Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. You can follow me at JID2021, again, JID2021 on Twitter. And of course, follow us on the Star Wars Underworld Discord, link in the description below. Thank you, Red, as always, for joining me. This has been a great adventure going through all of the Tales of the Jedi stuff together. I will get you on when we do Redemption as our kind of our epilogue to this. That's gonna be fun. That's one I'm not as familiar with myself, but I do know to be very interesting because I know that came later. But as always, folks, thank you for joining us. So let's blow this thing and head home.